There's certain things we can't avoid, our genetics and things like that, but sound-induced hearing loss is actually 100% preventable.
Using our ears and listening to each other is probably the most crucial part of being a musician or a music teacher. Of all the things that we need the most, our hearing is probably more important than any lesson, any expensive instrument, and yet for some reason hearing protection is probably one of the most overlooked and misunderstood things for anyone involved in music. I can say firsthand as a percussionist and someone who taught marching band for years, I really wish that I knew some of the science behind hearing protection and what is actually going on when we as musicians simply do our craft or try to teach our craft or even help out as a parent, as you're going to see in this video. J.W. Pepper has put together some great resources for music teachers and musicians regarding wellness, covering all kinds of topics from physical technique on the instrument, vocal tips for singers, and even mental health tips. And today in this video, we wanted to get right to the science behind hearing protection to clear up a lot of the myths that are out there. And we thought the best way to do that was to consult an expert. So we went out to the University of Pittsburgh to the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences to speak directly with Dr. Catherine Palmer, who handles hearing protection of all kinds, but specifically works with musicians to help with the constant need of protecting the most important instrument that we have, our hearing. So let's hear, no pun intended, from Dr. Palmer and see what insights she can share with us. And if you find any of this information helpful and you want to learn more, we have links below at our dedicated wellness landing page, and please consider subscribing. It really helps get the word out there about these kinds of topics.
I am a professor at the University of Pittsburgh in the Department of Communication Science and Disorders and in the Department of Otolaryngology. And then I serve as the director of audiology for the integrated UPMC health system. So in that capacity, we run the Musicians Hearing Center, which we opened in early 2000, where we certainly want to protect anybody's hearing, but we do focus on musicians because they often don't realize there's hearing protection that will work for them and let their music sound correct, but safe when they do those activities. I've been doing this since 1990. The most common kind of hearing loss is damage to the sensory organ, to the inner ear. So that damage can happen through genetics. People can be born with hearing loss, but as we age, it can be related to age-related changes, which often bundle in things like certain medications can hurt that part of your ear, and sound, noise. And the most common damage to the inner ear is noise. And we try not to actually call it noise anymore, but sound damage, because when we say noise, people often think of something they don't like to hear, but it actually has nothing to do with the thing you're hearing. It has to do with how loud it is and how long you listen to it. So it's really just sound damage. And that damage is happening to what are called hair cells. So in the sensory organ, we have these little hair cells, and when sound comes into the ear, it moves fluid that's in that space that disrupts these hair cells, and they trigger the nerve of hearing. So if the sound is so loud, it disturbs the hair cells in a way that damages them, they die off and no longer transmit those particular pitches that were damaged. A good example of that is, let's say you're exposed to really loud sounds. So what you might experience immediately is a sense of fullness in your ears, you might have a sense of decreased hearing, and you might hear ringing in your ears, which we call tinnitus. So that is short term. Some of that might resolve the first couple times you're exposed to loud sound, but over time those things are going to continue. So the hearing loss you experience from sound damage typically is gradual. So in the beginning you don't notice a lot, but over time the first thing you'd notice is you're not really hearing well in complex listening situations. Like if you're out with friends and it's noisy, you're not hearing as well as everybody else. And then over time, that gets worse, and you notice more of that hearing loss. And that's one of the problems with noise-induced or sound-induced hearing loss, is it doesn't make your ears bleed, you're not in pain, where if those things happen, people would do something really quickly, but it's really, you know, a hidden kind of problem in the beginning that then takes on you know, a larger context for people. They have more difficulty, and that ringing in the ears can be some of their most serious difficulty. Actually, having a constant sound in your ears can be really disruptive, and particularly disruptive for musicians. People make the mistake too, we see older musicians who are like, I already damaged my hearing, there's nothing I can do. That is the wrong attitude. You want to preserve what you've got. You don't want to increase it for exactly why you said, because the more damage, the more likely you'll have those discrimination problems. And the more likely you'll have that constant ringing in your ears. And you think of someone like Beethoven. People often talk about Beethoven because he ended up deaf and yet wrote amazing music. But we had the chance to review a lot of his letters and his writings. And when you review those, the thing he complained about was not his hearing loss. It was the roaring tinnitus in his ear that really made him very disturbed. You know, it just was constant for him. So I never want to minimize that, because we focus on hearing loss, but preventing having tinnitus is really huge for musicians. Any pitched sound can damage hearing, and that's really important. People tend to pick on the piccolo players.
I'm a piccolo player.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm here to defend you. You are no more dangerous than any of the other instruments. It does not matter in terms of sound, whether it's low or high pitched sound. It really is all about level and length of time, which is what we call dose. How long you listen to it, how loud it is, regardless of pitch. And that's out throughout your whole day. So again, we always say to musicians, what other things are you doing, and where maybe could you be protecting your hearing, you know, throughout the day? But in terms of damage, you're absolutely right. It's those higher pitches that we lose first, and then that kind of moves down to the lower pitches. And those higher pitches are critical for distinguishing speech, because they tend to be things like F's and T's and TH's. Yep, so that is what you lose first. But you think about something like a marching band, the data are you have about 4 seconds until you have damage. So there is
4
no,
seconds.
yeah, there is no 4-second rehearsal that I'm aware of. So really, for something like that, you know, that kind of sound, you simply have to be wearing hearing protection, or you are going to end up with hearing loss. The thing is, if you think of college kids, they're not going to notice it. Now, if they have tinnitus, they may notice that sooner. But the hearing loss, they're not going to notice until probably 5 years after they graduate. And then they're going to start noticing that, oh, I don't really hear as well in noise as my friends do. Things like that. So it's a very gradual process. The highest prevalence of hearing loss is in aging adults, but that wraps in exposure to sounds and aging. So then if you just look at any particular group, the musicians are a highly exposed group, and so they do have a high prevalence of hearing loss if they're not using hearing protection. And it used to be that you had to go out and buy a sound level meter to measure these kinds of things. So for a lot of band directors, they thought that's not what they're going to want to do. So now, really, you can have an app right on your phone. So the app we use is from NIOSH, which is from one of the government agencies who thinks about noise. So a band director or any individual musician can just open that up on their phone. It's a free app. They can see how loud things are. But one nice thing about that app is you can push record and do it over a whole session, and then you can go back and see like the peaks and the average over time. So it can be really informative, and I think help people make these kinds of decisions, because people who've been around loud sound a lot often don't realize how loud it is, and they'll think, it's not that loud, but that kind of helps to have the data to say, ooh, yeah, it is actually that loud. And historically, musicians didn't wear hearing protection because what we had available when you used it definitely protected your hearing, but it took out some pitches more than others. So then for musicians, that's unacceptable. Then they're not hearing their music correctly. Of course, then they didn't wear the hearing protection, ended up with hearing loss, and they're also not hearing their music correctly. So it's really a lose-lose in that. And then, you know, about 20 years ago, musician earplugs came on the market. And what's exciting about them is they bring down the pitches equally. So you have the correct perception of the sound, it's just lower. Any hearing protection they wear, if they wear it correctly, is going to protect their hearing. So I do want to say that. But for many musicians, they'll end up rejecting it, again, if it takes out some pitches more than others. There are even instances of like drummers using the wrong kind of protection, and they end up with wrist problems because they're actually hitting their drums harder because they're trying to make up for that difference. So there are very affordable products that are musician plugs, and what musician plugs, if they're labeled that way, what they're saying to you is if you wear them correctly, everything is going to still sound right. It'll have fidelity. It'll be correct in terms of the pitch relationships, but it'll decrease. And it is important that people put the hearing protection in correctly. We always recommend you reach over your head, pull up on your ear. That straightens your ear canal so you can really put in the musician plug nice and deeply while you still can hold on to it so you can get it out. That makes your own voice sound more natural while you're wearing it, and then it gives you better protection. And then if you're worried about the fit or if it's really protecting you, an audiologist can put a microphone in your ear and actually measure the protection. So we can tell you if the frequencies are aligning correctly, and we can tell you if it's actually reducing sound for you. We have these charts of how quickly any different instrument user will have damaged hearing, and drummers really immediately have damage typically. So they definitely need to wear hearing protection full time, and they often need a higher level of protection. So that may mean getting a custom musician plug. So then an audiologist puts silicone in the ear, gets the shape of the ear, builds that, and then there are different filters that can be used so the drummers can use a higher filter to be safe. Ideally, it would be great to have a baseline hearing test, because that's part of, when you think of a singer really appreciates their voice, right? Vocal health is something they learn about. You know, in most music programs, people don't learn about hearing protection, yet hearing is really part of their instrument in that sense. So having baseline hearing testing is great. That's covered by insurance. That's accessible to people. And then the audiologist can recommend hearing protection. But musicians' hearing protection is available over the counter. And so if someone doesn't want to go down that path, they should just go ahead and protect their hearing. They don't need to have had a hearing test. They don't have to have anything measured. So I wouldn't want that to be a barrier. They absolutely can start wearing hearing protection. We always want to be clear, we're not saying music is dangerous or people shouldn't do it. We just want to make it safe when we do that. And then we approached the pit band when Brad Townsend joined us. And that was exciting because we went to make a proposal to try to convince him. And when we sat down, he said, why don't we have hearing protection? So that made that a quick meeting.
Yeah. We highly encourage them to use it. And we make sure that at the beginning of the year, everyone has high quality hearing protection. And then we also have extras as the year goes on in case somebody loses theirs or forgets theirs. When I came here, I was really surprised and impressed and happy that the audiology department approached me before I even had a chance to approach them. And we're lucky enough that the University of Pittsburgh, they bring us high quality hearing protection for the whole band every year. And they come in and they do a little presentation on why it's important and how to use it properly and how to use it effectively. And I can tell you again, here the drummers especially are religious about it. They wear theirs all the time. And the rest of the band, like I said, we encourage it and make sure that we have it available for them. They appreciated that we were offering the hearing protection and wanted to do something for them to keep their health and safety in mind. And I know they really appreciate that the audiology department at Pitt was reaching out to us and providing us with the protection.
We started with our middle schools and high schools in the Pittsburgh Public Schools, actually, and we continue. That's a free program for the Pittsburgh Public Schools. And then our suburbs got involved. We have about 35 high schools now that provide non-custom musician earplugs for their students, and we go and teach them about them if they want that information. And then it's fun because when we work with the pit band, and Pitt, provides hearing protection for all the pit band players. We meet the freshmen. We say this is awesome that the pit band does this, but we always have them raise their hand if they're coming from high schools where they used hearing protection. And it is rewarding that every year more hands go up. So that's good to see. Kids are the fastest growing group of people with noise-induced hearing loss. So that hopefully gets people's attention. So we have to be thinking about that. And secondly, all the animal data point to the fact that if kids have damage to their hearing, they end up having more damage over time. So if you think of it, it's like their hair cells get damaged, and that creates kind of an unhealthy environment in that part of the sensory organ, and more hair cells die out around them. So there have been a number of articles now kind of making us more aware of really thinking about protecting kids, because they're going to end up with more damage over time. even if they've stopped listening to loud sounds. It's going to continue because of the original damage.
Okay, there was a lot of really great information here, and if you want to find out more from Dr. Palmer, we have a lot of other great tips that she shared with us on our social media, so definitely go follow us there for more great tips on musician hearing protection. Also, if you want to find out more about musician wellness, J.W. Pepper has created a dedicated page to this covering all kinds of things. We have articles and other great interviews coming out, so be sure to check out that great resource. The link is in the description below, along with a direct link to the musician's hearing plug that was talked about in this video. J.W. Pepper would like to thank the University of Pittsburgh, the School of Health and Rehabilitation Sciences, Dr. Catherine Palmer, and Dr. Brad Townsend, the Director of Bands for the University of Pittsburgh. Their commitment and advocacy for hearing protection is really amazing, and the work that the school provides for other local schools and getting awareness out there to young people is invaluable. And not just for young people. I can say, meeting Dr. Palmer and hearing some of the things she said regarding even protecting the hearing that you have. As someone who has major hearing loss from not protecting myself on the marching band field, this has been great advice for me, and I will certainly look to protect the hearing that I have now. I love music and I love teaching, and I never want to miss out on those things. So we hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. Remember to check out all the resources that we have below for musicians' wellness, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of the new content that we have coming out at J.W. Pepper.